Hello and welcome to Mr. Patrick's Corner. Today we're going to talk about Ukraine and Russia and Bo of the Fifth Column. Bo is a really nice guy and I like his talks, but I think he's all wet in regards to Ukraine. Why are we giving a blank check to the Ukrainians? Believe it or not, we didn't even know how many weapons they had. It took a congresswoman by Virginia Sparks out of Illinois to force the government to go in and send in an investigation team and see where the weapons are, how they were being used, and how they're being controlled. Now, Bo said, oh, well, we should, it's imperialism to ask the Ukrainians and the Russians to get to the table and work out a compromise. No, that's the Americans telling them what to do. Well, guess what? We overthrew a legitimate government in Ukraine. The guy got voted in legally. Okay? So we overthrow the guy. Wonderful Putin paid for Sebastopol, the base in Crimea. He had a long lease, and they were trying to overtake it. They were going to take the base over, and Vladimir Putin is not a guy to mess with. So he sent in the little green men, and they reconquered the Crimea. Okay? Now that isn't such a stretch because most of the people there are Russian. Not Ukrainian, but Russian. Now, please explain to me if the Ukrainians do drive the Russian forces out of Ukraine, out of the Donbass, the Donbass Ukraine area, what's going to happen to these Russian Ukrainians? Are we going to see ethnic cleansing like the Germans did or like the Czechs did to the Sudeten Germans? Come on, this is nuts. We're in this situation because Levinsky thinks he's God's gift to the world. Right now, he's got a busted country. And then Putin is already inferring what he's planning on doing. He's got ICBMs and he's got them loaded with, not with nuclear weapons, but they're missiles that go faster than the sound, faster than the speed of sound, and they can't be shot down. And each missile carries 4 to 5 of these rockets. Now, if they have 4 or 5 rockets, he sends over 100. They have 4,500 ICBMs. He just takes the nuclear warheads off, puts the MIRV rockets using. He has hypersonic missiles. They can't be shot down. And we don't have a way of shooting them down. They're too fast for the interceptor missiles. Now, what are we going to do? Because his plans are very simple. He's going to use these missiles to knock out every power plant in Ukraine. He's going to destroy what's left of the infrastructure, and he's going to go bloody well hell for leather. And that's why he pulled his troops back. He's going to use this to just slaughter out the Ukrainian army. And these missiles can do it because they're airburst. They don't need to land. They can explode above ground. They act like a thermal nuclear weapon in that respect. We were playing with them in Afghanistan. These suckers they're just about as impossible as you can get. Now, why can't we get a peace treaty going? Why can't Biden tell Zelensky and the EU, hey guys, maybe we should sit down and have a nice discussion and talk about this? We already have $300 billion of Putin's money sitting in the West. You can't, you have to take him into court to get that money and fiddle with it. You just can't give it to Lewinsky because that's breaking several laws that were set up right after World War II. Now, We need, Zelensky needs to rebuild his country. He's got $300 billion there. That's a start. He can make an agreement with Putin to give $50 billion a year from Russia to Ukraine and use that to rebuild his country. Because right now he can't rebuild. Nobody's going to invest money in Ukraine because guess what? He's got those wonderful Ukrainian Cossacks that are coming across the line and doing damage. They would blow up factories, rail lines, everything. And if they keep doing it, they don't have to win. All they have to do is keep the guerrilla tactics going. Okay? I don't think it makes sense. And my government, Mr. Biden, do you want to have a war that continues through the winter? Right now, the Germans don't have any. The Germans are losing money. They're taking out their reserves. The French are losing money. They don't. Their people are going to be cold and freezing. Next year, they might have enough this year to get through the winter, but next year, it's going to be the same thing, and they won't have the resources. There's not enough money. You know, money, money, and Bo, this idea of Ukraine getting Russian land, as soon as you give them the Ukrainians cross the border and take Russian land, then it's a different situation. Then it proves Putin was right. God, I hate saying that. But Putin has always made the claim that the West is trying to break up Russia. He's been trying to move his people into Central Asia, into the middle of the country. And he hasn't been able to because he doesn't have the road structure. He's been trying to build the road structure. You know, he is working his tushes off. Now, is the agricultural system in Russia available? Yes. There's an American there named Justice Walker. He's an American, an evangelical Christian. He's got a wife who's American and 4 daughters. He went to Russia in '92 with his parents when he was 11 years old. He speaks Russian fluently. He has been trying to get Russian citizenship. It would be a good thing if right now there's a chance that American farmers would go to Russia. The land is cheap, the regulations are simple, there's no genetic modified, the Russians don't allow genetic modified crops, okay? They have a very simple agricultural system that allows, you know, if you're a small farmer, you don't have the regulations that a giant 2,000 hectare co-op has. You have simple rules, simple regulations for what you're doing. And this benefits Russia. You know, there was an Englishman who's trying to explain it to wonderful Vladimir Putin. Oh, cherchez la femme. He was married to a Russian woman. His kids wanted to farm in Russia, but it was so difficult that they went to Great Britain. You need European and American farmers. Russian farmers, you know, farming in Russia is considering something for dopes. They, you know, they think it's stupid people working the fields. Only stupid people work in the fields, and it isn't. You have the ability right now to get farmers from the United States and from Europe. You have Dutch farmers that would love to get out of the Netherlands, because the Netherlands has given them all sorts of grief on how much nitrogen they can use. Well, believe it or not, when they use nitrogen for fertilizer, that's expensive. And so they have agronomists, agricultural people that tell them how much nitrogen they need to put in the soil. And they're very good farmers. The 2 greatest farming countries are the United States and the Netherlands. You know, they know what they're doing. Okay? But we have these people here, we have people that have made it very, very difficult because of the sanctions. And if you go online and push Justin Walker, he did a video about, wow, this is the most fantastic thing because now we can sell, we've lost our competition from the Europeans. The Europeans have lost the market. Right now, they've lost their industrial point. The largest importer of German products was Russia. They're not doing that anymore. The Germans don't have any natural gas. You know, the pipelines that got blown up would have been Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. The plan was basically they'd send in natural gas and later they would be producing hydrogen and using that as a means of getting zero carbon footprint. The Germans don't have any way to they've closed down their nukes, which I think was a mistake, and they are burning coal, which is increasing the problems of global warming. The French are in the same boat, the Belgians are in it, the Italians. You know, Mr. Biden should look at what's happening. I'm hoping this was a mild winter and the Europeans can sort of push through, but people are using 3/4 of their wages to heat their homes, to run their cars. They're going to be in poverty. And what is the wonderful EU going to do? Well, we got these sanctions on. Sanctions haven't hurt Russia. They're selling their oil to the Saudis, who are then remarketing it, and the Indians are remarketing it, and they're selling it back to Europe or back to somebody else. You know, there is a fuel shortage. We have closed, in California, we've closed down our pumping plants. You know, our oil fields, they've been closed. They're shut down. We don't have enough refinery capacity because we've closed our refineries because of the, global warming. Right, okay. Maybe they want to go back to the horse and buggy. Well, then you got another problem. You got horse shit. And then you got to figure out how to process it, how to clean it up. So, it doesn't work that way. Plus, why in the hell are the Finns and the Swedes wanting to join NATO? It's like, are these people just crazy or are they working at it? And why are we letting Sweden join NATO and placing them under Article 5? That's crazy. This is a country that funded North Vietnam with aid. They were the 4th largest donor of aid to the North Vietnamese. We lost 58,000 people in the Vietnam War. And now we're going to let these guys, and we're going to support them, and we're going to die for wonderful Sweden. You know what? I'd like to tell them to go jump in the lake. But the trouble is, they're Swedes. They've been pushing neutrality for over 200 years, and now suddenly they think the Russians are going to invade them. Wow. And now we're going to go back to Finland. The lady who's the prime minister over there, we want to do this. And the guy that was the past prime minister, under the EU charter that we have, that put us into the EU economic deal. Article 6 and Article 7 allows them to station foreign troops on their borders. Now, let's talk about that. That's the reason why Putin got a little ticked. Article 6 and Article 7 of the EU Charter would allow the stationing of foreign troops in Ukraine. And he's getting surrounded. He's got Poland part of the EU and NATO, which was never supposed to happen. We have constantly pushed this idea that we're not trying to invade Russia. Well, then please explain to me why you got guys like Estonia. You can lob missiles into St. Petersburg that would be there in less than 4 minutes. So please explain to me how you're not threatening Russia. And he's been talking to you, trying to explain to you for 40 years. And you just are as dense as bricks. Okay, he's found out that his army isn't what it's supposed to be, but he still has hydros. I'm never going to get this missile right, but hypersonic missiles. He's got 4 to 5 on each ICBM. He could take out Sweden and Finland, and they'd be decimated. And where are they going to get the money to rebuild? Everybody, thinks money just comes out of the air. Well, Americans should understand that every dollar we give to Ukraine it prevents us from helping Mississippi, their capital, Jackson. They have to boil their water. We have so much infrastructure problems here that I guess, gee whiz, I guess they don't have a contract with one of the leading arms manufacturers like Boeing, Martin, Raytheon. And on top of that, we don't have the missiles. We're using so much high-tech gear in Ukraine that we don't have enough Stingers, we don't have enough Javelins. We're about as empty and busted as a barrel. And Raytheon said it's going to take us 2 years to get our Stinger system back up and running. And then they didn't mothball this stuff. They didn't build extra tooling. And so we're in this mess. Now, if the Chinese decide to take on wonderful Taiwan, we're going to be in a big mess because we don't have enough arms. Now, the other thing, I know I'm switching points here. Okay, so successfully you drive the Russians out of Ukraine. You take parts of Russia. Now, please explain to me where you're going to get the troops to prevent guerrilla combat, like they did in Afghanistan. The Afghans used to tell this story. You have the watch, we have the time. And that's exactly what would happen if you start taking Russian land. When Hitler thought he could roll over Russia, well, he won the first year, he won the second, sort of on the second, but then he started moving farther east. Now, how are you going to move farther east? Estonia goes in with Estonia and Finland, go in and try to take St. Petersburg. Well, for 679 days, there was a standoff. The Russians survived. They lost 1.5 million people to starvation. Let me say that again. 1.5 million. The Finns had a great general, Carl Gustaf Mannerheim. He sounds Swedish, right? But he wasn't. He was a Russian. He always thought of himself as a Russian. He didn't even speak Finnish. He needed a translator. But he was a very good general. Now, he didn't go any farther than the land that the Finns lost in the Winter War. And then they drove the Germans out for the peace treaty that they worked out. And then they had the continuation war. They held the Russians back. They lost a little more territory. The problem here is none of these people that we have running this, including, I think, Bo, doesn't understand the Russian psyche. Now, these are not Soviets. If they were Soviets, we'd be even more in the back end of the bus. The Russians are Russian. They haven't been propagandized under the communists. The Russians who fought in the Finnish War, in the Winter War, They didn't surrender. They died at their places. They starved to death, but they didn't retreat. It wasn't like World War One. These guys fought because they were communists. They were indoctrinated. Everybody in Russia was indoctrinated. Now you kind of got a mindset, well, maybe this isn't my war. Maybe it's not my fight. I saw that Dagestani, and he's saying, well, I don't want to go to the war. I don't want to go to the war. Well, Putin saved Dagestan from the Chechens. The Chechens were stealing everything they couldn't get their hands on. They were taking the Dagestani women and selling them in Turkey to work in the brothels. So he told the Dagestanis, I can't give you troops, but I can give you supplies, I can give you training, I can give you logistics, and I can give you intelligence. And they fought for themselves, and they won. So now Putin is saying, hey, I need a little help. Can you give it to me? I don't know how this war is going to end. But I believe that when the American people realize that they're going to have to put an army in the field of at least 10 million people, and they're going to have to draft, suddenly nobody was going to want this war. Think about it. You're going to have to draft people. We don't have the manpower, the army. It's been all high tech and glitz, but we don't have enough tanks. We don't have enough troops. And we're in a hell of a mess. Now, Russia, I don't know, but I know that they can field large armies because they'll draft. They'll start shooting guys who decide that maybe they want to run. And I don't see it. I don't see the profit in it. I don't see anything that's going to happen. Putin is not going to be overthrown. You start taking Russian land, you're going to make him the most popular guy since Stalin. Oh, by the way, Stalin killed 26 million Russians. He was a better killer of Russians than the Germans. And you're going to put this out? Give me a, I don't get it. So we think that this is going to be a short war. The winter hasn't started yet. It's going to get worse. So I would rather that we have a diplomatic settlement and we could work out a diplomatic deal where we demilitarize that zone and we would be in a better position. Ukraine would get paid for Crimea and the Luhansk and the Donbass. The Russians there would act as a buffer zone. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you subscribe and like.